My name is Mac, and at 67 I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at a retired construction company owner. But that Saturday morning when I caught my son, Jake, slipping something wrapped in plastic into my fishing tackle box, while I pretended to organize my garage shelves, my blood ran cold. The way his eyes darted around, checking if anyone was watching, told me this wasn't some innocent prank. Sometimes being a father means protecting your children from themselves, even when they're 35 years old. The morning had started like any other Saturday in my comfortable Denver suburb. I'd been up since 5:30, old habits from 40 years in construction, refusing to die even after I'd sold MacArthur Construction 2 years ago. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar tune while I stood at my kitchen window watching the sunrise paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and purple. Retirement had been good to me. After decades of early mornings at job sites, dealing with permits, managing crews, and navigating the ups and downs of the construction industry, I'd finally cashed out when a national company made an offer I couldn't refuse. Now my biggest decisions involved choosing between fishing at Cherry Creek Reservoir or Chatfield, and whether to have lunch at the diner or grab a sandwich from home. My two boys had taken different paths in life. Tom, my younger son at 32, had followed his mother's love of education and became a high school math teacher. He lived across town with his wife, Nancy, and their two kids visited every Sunday for dinner and called twice a week just to chat. Jake, on the other hand, had always been the ambitious one. At 35, he'd built what appeared to be a successful real estate business, drove a BMW, and lived in a downtown loft that probably cost more per month than I'd paid for my first house. But lately, something had been off with Jake. Over the past few months, his visits had become more frequent, but stranger. He'd show up at odd hours, always with some excuse about being in the neighborhood. He'd ask peculiar questions about my daily routine when I went fishing, which days I visited Tom when I got my groceries. I'd chalked it up to him finally wanting to spend more time with his old man after years of being too busy climbing the corporate ladder. That morning, I was loading my gear for my weekly fishing trip with Bill Patterson, my friend since high school. We'd been meeting every Saturday at 7 sharp for the past 5 years, ever since Bill retired from the Denver Police Department. It was our ritual. Coffee complaints about our creaking joints, lies about the fish we'd caught the previous week, and usually a few hours of comfortable silence on the water. I heard Jake's BMW pull into my driveway at 6:15, its low purr distinctive even from inside the garage. Early, even for him. When he walked in, I immediately noticed things that sent my paternal alarm bells ringing. His usually pristine car had a scrape along the passenger side. His clothes, typically pressed and professional, were wrinkled like he'd slept in them. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands trembled slightly as he shoved them into his pockets. "Morning, Dad," he said, trying for casual but hitting somewhere around desperate. "Getting ready for fishing with Bill." "Same as every Saturday," I replied, continuing to organize my tackle box. "You're up early. Everything all right?" "Yeah, of course. Just thought I'd stop by. See if you needed anything." His eyes kept moving, scanning my garage like he was memorizing every detail. "So, where are you heading today? Cherry Creek?" "Thinking about trying Bear Creek today. Bill heard the trout are biting near the dam." I turned to grab my rod from the wall. "Want some coffee? Just made a fresh pot." "Sure, that'd be great." I headed inside, but something made me pause at the door. Call it intuition. Call it 40 years of reading people on construction sites. But I knew Jake was up to something. Instead of going straight to the kitchen, I moved to the side window that gave me a clear view of the garage. What I saw made my stomach drop. Jake looked around nervously, then quickly walked to my truck. He opened the back door and went straight for my large tackle box, the one I used for longer trips. From inside his jacket, he pulled out a package wrapped in what looked like multiple plastic bags, roughly the size of a thick phone book. His movements were practiced efficient. He opened the tackle box, moved some gear aside, and nestled the package deep in the bottom compartment where I kept my spare weights and seldom used lures. He arranged everything back carefully, making it look undisturbed. My mind raced. What was my son hiding in my fishing gear, drugs, money? Something worse. The careful way he handled it, the multiple layers of plastic, the size and apparent weight. None of it suggested anything innocent. I forced myself to move, grabbing 2 mugs and filling them with coffee. By the time I returned to the garage, Jake was leaning against my workbench, trying to look casual, but failing miserably. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Here you go," I said, handing him the mug, proud that my hand remained steady. "So what's really going on, son? You look tired." "Just work stuff, Dad. You know how it is. Market's been crazy." He took a sip, burned his tongue, and set the mug down quickly. "So Bear Creek Dam, huh? What time will you be back?" "Probably around 2 or 3. Why?" "No reason. Just wondering. Maybe we could grab dinner later." "Sure, if you want." I studied his face, seeing the boy who used to steal cookies and blame his brother, now grown into a man hiding something far more serious. "Jake, you know you can talk to me about anything, right?" For a moment his mask slipped. I saw fear there, real terror, before he forced a smile. "I know, Dad. Everything's fine. Just stressed about a big deal I'm working on." He finished his coffee quickly, made an excuse about meeting a client, and practically ran to his car. I watched him drive away, noting how he kept checking his rearview mirror, how he took an unusual route out of the neighborhood. I stood in my garage for a long moment staring at my tackle box. Whatever was in that package, Jake had involved me without my knowledge or consent. He'd made me a potential accomplice to something that had him terrified. The father in me wanted to protect him, to fix whatever mess he'd gotten into. But the practical part of me, the part that had built a business from nothing and survived in the cutthroat construction world, knew I needed to be smart about this. I pulled out my phone and called Bill. "Hey, buddy, I need to cancel fishing today. Something's come up with Jake." "Everything okay?" Bill's cop instincts kicked in immediately, even in retirement. "I'm not sure yet, but I might need your advice later." "You know where to find me, Mac, whatever you need." After hanging up, I stood there thinking. Jake had asked specifically about my schedule, about when I'd be back. He'd hidden something in my gear, knowing I'd be gone for hours. Was someone supposed to retrieve it while I was at the lake? Was I being used as an unwitting drug mule? Or was it something else entirely? One thing was certain. I couldn't just leave that package sitting in my tackle box. But I also couldn't confront Jake directly, not when he was this scared. I needed to understand what was happening, needed to protect both my son and myself. Looking back, that moment in my garage was when everything changed. When I stopped being just a retiree enjoying his golden years and became something I'd never expected. A father forced to play detective to save his son from himself. The morning sun continued its climb, but for me, darkness was just beginning to fall. After Jake's taillights disappeared around the corner, I stood in my garage wrestling with a decision no parent should have to make. The tackle box sat there looking innocent enough, but I knew it now held something that had my successful, confident son running scared. I approached it slowly, as if the package might explode. Using a rag to avoid leaving fingerprints, you pick up things married to a cop's daughter for 15 years, even after the divorce. I carefully lifted out my gear until I reached the bottom compartment. The package was heavier than I'd expected, maybe 5 or 6 pounds, wrapped in what I counted as 4 layers of plastic bags, each sealed with packing tape. My hands wanted to tear it open right there, But 40 years of solving problems on construction sites had taught me patience. Think first, act second. I set the package on my workbench and studied it. The shape was rectangular, consistent throughout. Through the plastic, I could make out what looked like bundles of something. The weight, the size, the careful wrapping. My mind went to two possibilities: cash or drugs. I thought about the recent news stories. Denver had seen an uptick in drug trafficking with several major busts in the past month. The DEA and local police were cracking down hard. If this was drugs, Jake wasn't just in trouble. He was in federal prison-level trouble. But something felt off about that theory. Jake had never shown signs of drug use and dealing that required a type of street knowledge my real estate son simply didn't possess. Cash made more sense, but raised just as many questions. Why would Jake need to hide money? Was it laundered, stolen? And why use his old man's fishing gear as a hiding spot? I carefully rewrapped the package and stood there thinking. Jake had mentioned financial stress, but I'd assumed it was just the usual entrepreneur's complaint. But then I remembered other things, how he'd sold his boat last month, claiming he was too busy to use it, how he'd passed on our family vacation to Phoenix saying he couldn't get away from work, how his ex-wife Linda had called me 3 months ago furious about late child support payments. The divorce. Of course. Jake's divorce from Linda had been brutal, dragging on for 2 years, and involving custody battles over their 2 kids. Divorce lawyers weren't cheap, especially the shark Jake had hired. Add in child support, alimony, maintaining his expensive lifestyle to keep up appearances. My successful son might not be as successful as he pretended. But financial troubles were one thing. Getting involved with people who wrapped money in plastic bags and made him shake with fear, that was something else entirely. I made my decision. Whatever was in that package, it was now evidence. Evidence of what I didn't know yet, but I needed to protect myself while figuring out how to protect Jake. First things first. Documentation. I photographed the package from every angle with my phone. Then I got my old construction site camera, the one I used for progress photos, and took more pictures. I wrote down the exact time Jake had arrived, when he'd hidden the package, and when he'd left. Details mattered in construction, and I had a feeling they'd matter here too. Next, I needed the package out of my possession, but somewhere I could control. Jake had given me a spare key to his BMW last year, in case of emergencies. I'd say this qualified. I wrapped the package in an old moving blanket, put it in a tool bag, and headed to my truck. Jake lived downtown, but I knew he had a client meeting in Cherry Hills this morning. He'd mentioned it while fidgeting with his coffee. His assigned parking spot at the loft would be empty. 25 minutes later, I was in his building's garage using his key fob to pop the trunk of his BMW. What I found there stopped me cold. Tucked under the spare tire was another package identical to the one I carried. Same wrapping, same size, same weight. My son wasn't making his first drop. This was an established pattern. How many times had he used my fishing trips? How long had this been going on? I photographed everything, then carefully placed both packages under the spare tire. Let Jake explain to whoever was expecting a pickup why the package wasn't in my tackle box. Maybe it would buy us time. Maybe it would escalate things. Either way, the contraband was out of my truck. The drive home gave me time to think. I needed help, but I had to be careful about who to trust. Bill would want to go straight to the police, but that could destroy Jake. My lawyer, Robert Shaw, would protect me, but might be obligated to report Jake. I needed someone who could investigate quietly, gather information without triggering alarms. Back home, I remembered Sarah Coleman. She'd done background checks for my construction company when we hired for sensitive positions. Former FBI, now private investigation. Discreet, thorough, and most importantly, not required to report discoveries to law enforcement unless subpoenaed. I called her from my home phone. "Sarah MacMacArthur, I need your help with a sensitive family matter." "Mac, good to hear from you. What's going on?" "I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you meet me today?" "That's serious. I can be at your house in 2 hours." While waiting for Sarah, I did something I should have done months ago. Really looked at Jake's life. Social media showed the perfect facade, smiling at real estate closings, charity golf tournaments, professional headshots. But I knew construction, and I knew when someone was building on a shaky foundation. I called my banker casually asking about real estate market trends. He mentioned several agencies had folded recently, the market softening. "Your boy Jake's hanging in there, though," he said. "Tough business right now." Hanging in there, not thriving, not succeeding, hanging. Sarah arrived promptly, still carrying herself with that FBI alertness, despite being in her 50s now. I'd set up my home office for privacy, closing blinds and turning on the radio low. Old habits from dealing with competitive construction bids. "Before we start," she said, pulling out a contract, "I need you to understand that I'm not law enforcement anymore. I can investigate, gather information, but if I discover imminent danger to someone, I have ethical obligations." "I understand. This is about my son Jake." I told her everything, showed her the photos, explained my suspicions. Sarah took notes in shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back, processing. "First instinct," I asked. "Not drugs," she said immediately. "Too heavy for the value, wrong packaging method. This sounds like money, probably payments for something illegal but not narcotics. Gambling debts, loan, sharking, money laundering, that arena." "Can you find out without alerting anyone?" "That's what I do, Mac. Give me 48 hours for preliminary investigation. I'll need Jake's full name, business information, phone numbers. I'll be discreet, but I need you to act completely normal. If Jake calls, don't mention this. If he visits, pretend nothing's happened." After Sarah left, I went through my normal Saturday routine, just shifted later. Mowed the lawn, washed my truck, had lunch at the diner where Mabel asked why I wasn't fishing. "Not feeling it today," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Around 3, my phone buzzed. Jake texting, "Hey Dad, dinner's off. Something came up. Talk tomorrow." I stared at that text for a long time. Had he discovered the packages were moved? Was he running? I responded simply, "No problem. Take care." That evening, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the mountains, nursing a beer I couldn't taste. Somewhere out there, my son was dealing with whatever had driven him to use his father as an unwitting accomplice. The boy who'd helped me build this very deck, who'd been so proud when I taught him to use a level, was now hiding packages in my truck and running from shadows. The silent wolf strategy, Sarah had called it when we discussed how to proceed. Don't react immediately. Gather information. Prepare your response. Strike when you have advantage. It went against every protective instinct I had as a father, but sometimes protecting someone meant letting them think they'd fooled you while you worked to save them from themselves. I went to bed that night with my phone on the nightstand, half expecting a middle-of-the-night call. From Jake, from the police, from whoever had my son so frightened. But the night passed quietly, leaving me alone with my fears and the knowledge that everything was about to change. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood. I dressed for church out of habit more than faith, wondering if Jake would show up for our standing family dinner that evening. Wondering if I'd ever look at my son the same way again. Wondering if I could save him from whatever hole he'd dug himself into. The packages were in his car now. The next move was his. But I'd be watching, waiting, gathering strength for whatever came next. Because that's what fathers do. Even when their children betray them, even when trust is shattered. We find a way to rebuild, one careful move at a time. Sunday service ended at 11:30, but I barely heard Pastor Williams's sermon about forgiveness and redemption. My mind kept circling back to those packages, to Jake's trembling hands, to the fear in his eyes. I shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and escaped as quickly as politeness allowed. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shiny and clean. I drove home on autopilot muscle memory, navigating while my thoughts churned. Tom had already texted that he'd be there for dinner with Nancy and the kids. No word from Jake. I'd just pulled into my driveway when I noticed them. A gray sedan parked 3 houses down, 2 men inside pretending to read newspapers. A black SUV at the corner, engine running, despite the empty driver's seat. My construction sites had taught me to spot OSHA inspectors and city officials from a mile away. These weren't bureaucrats. My phone rang as I walked to my front door. Unknown number. Mr. MacArthur. This is Detective Morrison with the Denver Police Department. We need to speak with you immediately regarding your vehicle. My vehicle? What about it? Sir, we have a warrant to search your truck and any fishing equipment. We'll be at your residence in 5 minutes. The line went dead. 5 minutes. I looked at the surveillance vehicles. They were already moving, closing in like a carefully orchestrated dance. This wasn't a fishing expedition. Someone had given them specific information. I did 3 things quickly. First, I forwarded the photos of the packages to Sarah with a message, "Police incoming." Second, I called Robert Shaw's emergency line, left a brief message. Third, I went to my bathroom and took 2 aspirin, then splashed cold water on my face. If I was going to play the confused elderly man, I needed to be ready. The police arrived exactly 5 minutes later. Not patrol officers, but detectives, and what looked like DEA agents. Detective Morrison, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair, presented the warrant. It was specific: my Ford F-150 fishing equipment and garage. I don't understand, I said, letting my voice quaver slightly. What's this about? Sir, we have reason to believe your vehicle may contain illegal substances. We need you to step aside while we search. Illegal substances? I'm 67 years old. I run a construction company. Well used to. I'm retired now. Is this some kind of mistake? Morrison studied me carefully. Where were you yesterday morning, Mr. MacArthur? Here. I was supposed to go fishing with Bill Patterson, but I canceled. Wasn't feeling well. I touched my chest. Heart's been acting up. Bill's retired Denver PD, you can check with him. The mention of Bill being former law enforcement caused a slight shift in Morrison's expression. Meanwhile, her team swarmed my truck, going through everything with methodical precision. They found my tackle box, quickly emptied it completely. Nothing. The bottom compartment yielded only old weights and rusty lures. Check it again, Morrison ordered. Use the density scanner. They scanned, searched, even brought in a drug-sniffing dog. The German Shepherd showed mild interest in the tackle box, but didn't alert. Of course not. Money didn't smell like drugs. 40 minutes into the search, just as they were checking my garage rafters, Jake's BMW screeched into my driveway. He jumped out, face flushed, playing the concerned son perfectly. Dad, what's going on? Mrs. Chen next door called me, said police were here. Are you okay? Jake, I said, letting relief color my voice. I don't know what's happening. They say someone put something in my truck. Jake turned to Morrison, indignation rising. This is harassment. My father is a respected businessman, a pillar of the community. What evidence do you have? Sir, please step back. What's your name? Jake MacArthur. I'm his son, and I'm calling our lawyer right now if you don't explain what's going on. Morrison's eyes narrowed. We received credible information that your father's vehicle was being used to transport illegal materials. Credible information from who? Jake demanded. Someone's obviously trying to set him up. Dad's been getting strange calls lately, haven't you, Dad? I hadn't, but I nodded anyway. Yes, hang-ups mostly. I thought it was telemarketers. Jake was good. I had to give him that. He pulled out his phone, called Robert Shaw's office, left a message demanding immediate response. All the while, his performance never wavered. The protective son outraged at this violation of his elderly father's peace. But I knew him. Had changed his diapers, taught him to throw a baseball, watched him lie about broken windows and stolen candy. The telltale vein at his temple throbbed. His left hand, shoved in his pocket, was clenched so tight I could see the outline of his knuckles. When one of the officers approached his BMW to move it out of the way, Jake almost lunged forward before catching himself. "Is that your vehicle, sir?" Morrison asked, noticing his reaction. "Yes, but this warrant is for my father's truck, not mine. You have no right—" "You're correct," Morrison interrupted. "We're only authorized to search your father's vehicle and property." She turned back to me. "Mr. MacArthur, has anyone else had access to your truck recently?" "Well, Jake has a key," I said innocently. "In case of emergencies. Tom, that's my younger son, he has one too. My neighbor waters my plants when I travel, so she knows where the spare is hidden." Jake shot me a look, quickly masked. I'd just given the police a list of suspects that included him. The search team finished empty-handed. Morrison clearly wasn't happy, but she maintained professionalism. "Mr. MacArthur, I apologize for the inconvenience. Here's my card. If you remember anything unusual, anyone hanging around your vehicle, please call me." "Of course," I said, taking the card with a slightly shaky hand. "This is all very upsetting. My heart medication—" "Dad, come inside," Jake said quickly. "I'll handle this." As the police prepared to leave, Morrison pulled Jake aside. I couldn't hear what she said, but Jake's face went pale beneath his attempted bravado. She handed him a card, too, then got in her sedan. The circus packed up and left, leaving my driveway empty except for Jake's damaged BMW. "Those incompetent—" Jake started, then caught himself. "Dad, are you really okay?" "Just shaken up," I said, playing my part. "Why would someone do this, set me up like that?" "I don't know, but I'll find out," Jake said grimly. "Maybe it's connected to the construction business. Did you have any enemies, competitors who might want revenge?" "Interesting." Jake was trying to deflect, create alternative theories. "I don't think so. I always played fair." We went inside. Jake paced my kitchen like a caged animal while I made coffee with deliberately slow movements. His phone buzzed constantly. Texts he read but didn't answer. Each buzz made him more agitated. "You should go," I said finally. "I'm fine. Just need to rest." "I should stay. What if they come back?" "Jake, I've got Bill down the street. Half the neighborhood is retired cops. I'll be fine." He wanted to argue, but his phone buzzed again, and this time his face went white. Okay, but call me if anything happens. Anything at all." "I will." He hugged me, and for a moment I felt him trembling. My boy, my firstborn, was terrified. Every instinct screamed at me to hold him, tell him I knew everything, promise to fix it. Instead, I patted his back and let him go. From my window, I watched him sit in his car for 5 minutes before driving away. As soon as he turned the corner, I went to my garage and checked the small camera I'd hidden between paint cans. It had recorded everything, including Jake's reactions during the search. My phone rang. Sarah Coleman. "Mac, what happened?" "Police searched my truck. Found nothing, of course. Jake showed up, played the outraged son. I've been digging. Mac, your son owes money to some very dangerous people. Not drug dealers. Worse. I'm coming over. We need to talk." While waiting for Sarah, I reviewed the morning's events. The timing was too perfect. Someone knew Jake had planted something and tipped off the police. But they'd expected to find it in my truck, not his. Who knew about Jake's routine? Who wanted him caught, but didn't know he'd already moved the packages? The answer hit me like a 2x4 to the head. This wasn't about setting me up. It was about setting Jake up. Someone wanted him arrested, wanted the police to find those packages. But Jake's paranoia had saved him. By arriving during the search, by moving the packages to his own car, he'd inadvertently foiled their plan, which meant whoever wanted Jake arrested now knew their plan had failed. They knew the packages were still out there, and they knew Jake would be desperate making mistakes. My son thought he'd been clever using his old man's fishing routine, but he'd walked into a trap that was now snapping shut around him. The only question was whether I could spring him loose before it crushed him completely. Sarah arrived with a thick folder and grim expression. "Mac, we need to talk about your son's gambling problem and the people he owes $300,000 to." $300,000. The number hit me like a punch. No wonder Jake was terrified. No wonder he was moving packages for dangerous people. My successful son, the real estate mogul, was drowning, and he'd tried to use his father as a life preserver. But someone had cut the rope. Now we were both in deep water, and the sharks were circling. Sarah spread files across my dining room table like she was dealing cards in the world's worst poker game. Photos, financial records, printed screenshots. Each one painted another brushstroke in the portrait of my son's destruction. Jake's been gambling for at least 18 months. She began her FBI training evident in the methodical presentation. Started with sports betting, moved to underground poker games, then high-stakes private tables. He was good at hiding it initially, but addiction always shows patterns. I stared at a photo of Jake entering a warehouse in Commerce City at 2 a.m. timestamp from 3 weeks ago. My son, who claimed to be showing houses, was walking into what Sarah identified as an illegal casino run by the Kozlov family. "Of the Kozlovs?" I asked, though the name meant nothing to me. Ukrainian organization, been in Denver since the 90s. They run legitimate businesses as fronts. Import, export, check cashing used car lots. But their real money comes from gambling, loan sharking, and money laundering. Your son owes them $300,000 accumulated over the past 8 months. 300,000. The number kept echoing in my head. I'd built my company from nothing, knew the value of every dollar. How could Jake have lost that much? It started smaller. Sarah continued reading my expression. Maybe 10, 20,000, but they let him win, initially get confident. Then the losses started. They extended credit charged interest. 30% monthly. Do the math. I did. Compound interest on gambling debts. A debt that doubled every few months. A spiral that only ended one way. The packages. Money laundering. They use legitimate-looking people as mules. Move cash from one location to another, keeping it below reporting thresholds. Jake's perfect. Successful realtor, good family, no record. Who'd suspect him of carrying dirty money in his father's truck? But someone did suspect. The police were tipped off by the Volkov family, different Russian organization competitors to the Kozlovs. They've been trying to muscle in on the gambling territory. Getting Jake arrested would have been a major blow to the Kozlovs' operation. My head spun. My son wasn't just in debt. He was a pawn in a war between criminal organizations. "How do you know all this?" Sarah pulled out another photo. "Because I still have friends in the bureau. And because your son made a bigger mistake than gambling." The photo showed Jake with a woman I recognized, Linda, his ex-wife. But the timestamp was from last week, and they were outside Linda's father's house in Highlands Ranch. Linda's father, George Brennan, owns a chain of marijuana dispensaries. All legal, all legitimate. But guess who approached him 6 months ago about using his businesses to launder money? Jake. The word tasted bitter. George refused, threatened to call the police. Jake backed off, but Linda noticed her father acting strangely afterward. She hired a private investigator, Not me, someone else, who uncovered Jake's gambling debts. That's why she's been pushing so hard on the custody battle. She doesn't want the kids near their father while he's involved with these people. I thought about my grandchildren, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Mason. They idolized their father, had no idea he was drowning in dangerous waters. "There's more," Sarah said quietly. "I'm sorry, Mac." She pulled out an insurance document. My life insurance policy, but with recent modifications. Jake had been added as sole beneficiary 6 months ago, and the amount had been increased to $2 million. The signature looked like mine, but I'd never seen this document. "He forged it?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "A good forgery. He probably had help. Mac, if something happened to you, an accident, a heart attack during one of your fishing trips, Jake would get $2 million, more than enough to pay his debts and start fresh." The room seemed to tilt. My son, my firstborn, had forged documents that would benefit from my death. Had he progressed from using me as a mule to planning something worse? "I don't think he'd actually. I started." "Neither do I," Sarah interrupted. "But desperate people do desperate things, and the Kozlovs might not give him a choice. Make it look like an accident, collect the insurance, pay the debt. Everyone wins except you." My phone buzzed. Jake texting. "Dad, you okay? Worried about earlier? Let me know you're all right." Worried about me or worried about his packages, I texted back, "Fine, just tired." Sarah gathered another set of documents. There's a pattern to the money movements, every 2 weeks coinciding with your Saturday fishing trips. Based on the locations where you typically fish, and the timestamps from traffic cameras, someone retrieves packages from your truck while you're on the water. You're gone 4 to 5 hours, giving them plenty of time. "How many runs?" "At least 12 that I can document. If each package contained 50,000 in cash, that's 600,000 moved. The Kozlovs take a cut, apply the rest to Jake's debt. But with interest accumulating, he's basically running in place." "What about the police? Morrison seemed competent." "She is. 20-year veteran works organized crime. But she needs evidence, and the Kozlovs are careful. Your son is small fish to her. She wants the whole organization. If she could flip Jake, get him to testify." "He'd be dead before the trial," I finished. "Probably, which is why we need a different approach." Sarah pulled out a business card. "Robert Shaw's a good lawyer, but you need someone who specializes in cases like this. Marcus Freeman, former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney. He's handled similar situations. People caught between criminal organizations and law enforcement. He can negotiate with both sides." I took the card and noticed my hand was steady, despite everything. 40 years of handling construction crises had prepared me for this moment. Stay calm, assess the situation, find solutions. "What else did you find?" Sarah hesitated, then pulled out bank records. Jake's been stealing from his clients. Small amounts from escrow accounts, money that sits temporarily during real estate transactions. He's careful, replaces it before anyone notices, but it's a shell game. Eventually someone will audit, or he'll miss a deadline. Another blow. My son wasn't just a gambling addict in debt to criminals. He was embezzling from the people who trusted him. How had I missed this? How had the boy who helped me build houses turned into someone who stole from others? "There's a timeline issue," Sarah continued. "The State Real Estate Commission does random audits. Jake's number could come up any day. When it does, the missing money will be discovered. He'll lose his license, face criminal charges, and still owe the Kozlovs. That's probably why he's escalating, taking bigger risks. Like using me. Like using you. Mac, I know this is hard, but you need to protect yourself. Document everything. Change your locks, passwords, financial accounts. Make sure Jake can't access anything without your knowledge." "He's still my son," I said, the words feeling hollow. "Which is why you need to be smart about saving him. The Kozlovs won't care about family bonds if Jake can't pay. They'll use whoever they can to get their money. After Sarah left, I sat in my empty house processing everything. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Jake's college graduation, his wedding to Linda, holding newborn Emma. When had that promising young man become someone who forged his father's signature and stole from clients? My phone rang. Bill Patterson. "Mac, you okay? Heard about the police visit?" Word travels fast. Retired cops are worse than housewives for gossip. What really happened? I gave him the sanitized version. Mysterious tip search found nothing, probably mistaken identity. Bill listened, made appropriate noises, but I could tell he wasn't buying it. "Mac, we've been friends for 50 years. Whatever's going on, you don't have to handle it alone." "I know Bill. When I can talk about it, you'll be the first to know." That evening, I started my own investigation. Changed all my locks, even though Jake didn't have keys to the house. Set up new security cameras, better hidden this time. Moved my important documents to a safety deposit box Jake didn't know about. Called my insurance company, confirmed no changes had been made to my policies. The forged documents hadn't been submitted yet. Around 9 headlights swept across my living room. Jake's BMW driving slowly past my house. He didn't stop, just cruised by like he was checking on me, or checking if the police were still around, or seeing if I was home before attempting something else. I turned off the lights, sat in the dark, watching the street. The packages were still in his trunk, I was sure of it. He couldn't risk moving them, not with the police attention. But eventually he'd have to deliver them or face consequences from the Kozlovs. Tomorrow I'd call Marcus Freeman. Tomorrow I'd start building a strategy to save my son from himself. But tonight, I mourned for the boy he'd been, and the man he'd failed to become. Tonight I admitted that trust once shattered might never fully heal. The Silent Wolf strategy required patience planning and the ability to strike at the right moment. I had the first 2. Now I needed to create the third, an opportunity to expose the truth while protecting Jake from the worst consequences of his actions. But first I had one more call to make. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years. "Mac." Linda sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "Linda, we need to talk about Jake. Can you meet me tomorrow and bring whatever your investigator found? It's time we compared notes." "Thank God," she breathed. "I've been so worried. Yes, I'll meet you. Mac, be careful. Jake's not himself anymore." No, I thought, hanging up. He's not. But somewhere inside, the desperate man running from criminals and police was still my son. I just had to find a way to reach him before it was too late. Marcus Freeman's office occupied the top floor of a converted Victorian in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and modern furniture that somehow worked together. He looked like a law professor more than a former federal prosecutor. Wool vest, round glasses, salt and pepper beard. But his eyes held the sharpness of someone who'd spent years dissecting criminal organizations. "Your son is in significant legal jeopardy," he said after reviewing everything Sarah and I had compiled. "Embezzlement, money laundering, fraud with the insurance documents. If the state audit hits before we act, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. But if we go to the police first, depends on what he can offer. Detective Morrison wants the Kozlovs. Jake's testimony could be valuable, but only if he provides substantive evidence. Moving money isn't enough. They need records recordings names of other participants. He'll never wear a wire. He's too scared." Freeman leaned back, fingers steepled. What if he didn't know he was wearing one? Linda shifted beside me. We'd met earlier, compared what we knew. Her private investigator had photographed Jake meeting with various Kozlov associates, documented his declining mental state, recorded him begging her father for money. She was torn between protecting her children and saving their father. "You mean entrap my own son?" I asked. "I mean save him from himself. Mac, the Kozlovs don't let people walk away from $300,000 debts. Even if Jake somehow paid it back, he knows too much. They'll either keep using him until he's caught or eliminate him when he becomes a liability. What about witness protection? Possible if he provides enough intelligence. But that means leaving everything. His kids, his life, you, starting over somewhere with a new identity. Is that what you want for him? I thought about Emma and Mason, about Sunday dinners, about the possibility of redemption. No, there has to be another way. Freeman studied me over his glasses. There might be, but it requires careful orchestration and Jake's complete cooperation once we reveal our hand. Can you get him to trust you even after he realizes you've known all along? He's my son, I said simply. The plan Freeman outlined was complex but elegant. First, we needed Jake desperate enough to confess everything. Then we needed him to provide evidence against the Kozlovs while believing it was his idea. Finally, we needed to protect him from retaliation while navigating the legal system. I'll reach out to Morrison discreetly, Freeman said. Feel her out about a cooperation agreement. Meanwhile, you need to create a crisis that forces Jake to come clean. That afternoon, I put the first phase into motion. I called Jake, let panic creep into my voice. Son, something strange happened. I was cleaning the garage and found something in my old tackle box, the one I haven't used in months. It looks like, I don't know, wrapped in plastic? Should I call the police? Silence on the other end. Then Jake's forced calm. Don't do anything, Dad. I'll be right over. 20 minutes later, his BMW screeched into my driveway. He looked worse than before. Unshaven clothes, wrinkled eyes, bloodshot. The confident real estate agent was gone, replaced by a haunted man barely holding together. Where is it? He asked, not bothering with pleasantries. In the garage. Jake, what is this? Please tell me you're not involved in something illegal. He pushed past me, went straight to the garage. I'd placed an old package there wrapped similarly but containing only newspapers. Jake grabbed it, relief flooding his face before confusion set in. This wasn't what he'd hidden. This isn't... He started, then caught himself. I mean, I don't know what this is either. Don't lie to me, I said quietly. Not anymore. He froze, still holding the fake package. What do you mean? I saw you, Jake. Saturday morning. I watched you put something in my tackle box. I moved it before the police came. The package slipped from his hands. He staggered back, hit the workbench slumped against it. You knew this whole time, you knew. What have you gotten yourself into, son? The dam broke. Words poured out of him. The gambling, the debts, the threats. How it started with a sure bet on a football game, just trying to make extra money for the divorce lawyers. How one loss led to another, how the credit kept flowing until he was drowning. How the Kozlovs offered him a way out. Just move some money, use his legitimate business as cover. They said no one would suspect your truck. He sobbed. Your retired established pattern with the fishing. It was supposed to be simple, a few runs to work off the debt. But the interest kept growing, and they wanted more runs, bigger amounts. The insurance policy. His face crumbled completely. I wasn't going to use it, I swear, Dad. It was just insurance. If something happened to me, at least you'd be taken care of. I changed the beneficiary so the money would go to the kids through you. I wanted to believe him, but the forgery said otherwise. Still, I let him talk, my phone in my pocket, recording everything through an app Sarah had installed. Every confession, every name he mentioned, every detail about the Kozlov operation. Why didn't you come to me? I asked when he finally ran out of words. How could I? You built everything from nothing, never gambled, never took shortcuts. You'd be so disappointed. I'm disappointed you didn't trust me. The gambling, the debt. We could have worked through that. But using me as a mule, putting my freedom at risk, stealing from your clients. He flinched at the last one. You know about that too. I know everything, Jake. Sarah Coleman's been investigating for days. Oh, God, he moaned. I'm going to prison. I'll lose the kids, lose everything. Maybe not, I said carefully. But you need to make this right. All of it. Freeman had coached me on this part. Plant the seeds, let Jake think it was his decision. The police were here because someone tipped them off. The Volkovs, apparently. They wanted you caught with the packages. Jake's head snapped up. The Volkovs. But how did they… He stopped mind racing. Dmitri, he asked too many questions last week about the delivery schedule. The Kozlovs have a leak, I continued. Someone's feeding information to their competitors. How long before they blame you? Fear replaced despair in his eyes. They'll think I'm the rat. Oh God, Dad, they'll kill me. Unless you have protection, unless you make a deal first. I watched him process this, seeing the moment he realized his only option. The police. If I cooperate. Freeman can arrange a meeting with Morrison, but you need evidence. Names, dates, amounts. Something more than your word. I have some records, he admitted. Hidden in my office, and I recorded a few conversations. Insurance in case they tried to claim I stole from them. Perfect. He'd been paranoid enough to create exactly what we needed. Get everything together. Freeman will contact Morrison, set up a meeting. But Jake, once you start this, there's no backing out. I know. He looked older than his 35 years, defeated, but finally honest. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I never meant for it to go this far. I know, son. But sorry isn't enough anymore. You need to make this right. That evening, Freeman called Morrison directly. The detective was interested but cautious. She'd suspected Jake's involvement but needed concrete evidence. A meeting was arranged for the next morning. Jake, Freeman, Morrison, and a federal prosecutor. I spent the night at Jake's apartment, partly to support him, but mostly to ensure he didn't run or do something stupid. We went through his records together, organizing evidence. The hidden recordings were gold. Kozlov lieutenants discussing murder drug shipments, political bribes. Jake had accidentally gathered intelligence on operations far beyond his money laundering. Why did you record them? I asked. Paranoia, he admitted. I knew they'd eventually see me as a liability. Thought if I had dirt on them, it might keep me alive. Smart and stupid simultaneously. Classic Jake. Around midnight, his phone rang. Kozlov's personal number. Jake looked at me, terrified. Answer it, I said. Act normal. Jake. Kozlov's accented voice filled the room on speaker. We have problem. Package from Saturday not delivered. Where is it? I couldn't make the drop, Jake stammered. The police were crawling all over my father's neighborhood. I still have it. This is unacceptable. You bring tomorrow noon warehouse on Brighton Boulevard. No excuses. I'll be there. Jake, if you're thinking of doing something stupid, remember, we know where your children go to school. The line went dead. Jake's face had gone white. They're threatening Emma and Mason. Tomorrow at noon you'll be in protective custody, I reminded him. Morrison will handle the kids' safety. But this threat, record it, document it. It's another nail in their coffin. We worked until 3 a.m. organizing everything. Financial records showing the money trail, recordings of criminal conspiracies, photos of Jake with various Kozlov associates, names of dirty cops on their payroll. It was enough to bring down the entire organization if handled correctly. As dawn broke over Denver, Jake finally collapsed on his couch. What happens to me, Dad, after all this? Freeman thinks he can get you into witness protection program. New identity, new life. You'll lose your real estate license, but you'll be alive and free. What about the kids? Linda's willing to work something out. Supervised visits at first, maybe more later if you stay clean. Get therapy for the gambling. Rebuild your life the right way. And you, can you forgive me? I sat beside him, put my arm around his shoulders like when he was young and scared of thunderstorms. I'm your father, Jake. I'll always love you. Forgiveness? That'll take time. But we'll work on it. He leaned against me, exhausted and broken, but finally free of the lies. I'm sorry I'm not the son you wanted. You're the son I have, I said. That's enough. Now let's go save your life. At 8 sharp, we arrived at Freeman's office. Morrison was already there with a federal prosecutor named Chen and 2 FBI agents. The debriefing took 6 hours. Jake laid out everything. The gambling operation, the money laundering network, the corrupt cops, even a judge who fixed cases for Kozlov. By the end, the federal prosecutor was practically salivating. This is enough to invoke RICO statutes. We can take down the entire organization. My client wants full immunity and witness protection, Freeman stated. For this level of cooperation done, but he needs to make the noon meeting wear a wire get Kozlov to incriminate himself further. Jake paled. They'll check for wires, they always do. Not this kind, one of the FBI agents said, producing what looked like a button. Latest generation undetectable by standard sweeps. We'll have full tactical backup. The moment we have what we need, we move in. I watched my son agree to walk into a warehouse full of criminals while wearing a wire, and my heart broke a little more. This was the price of his choices, but it didn't make it easier to accept. Morrison pulled me aside while they prepped Jake. Your son's lucky to have you. Most parents would have let him sink. He's made terrible choices, I said. But he's still my son. That means something. It does, she agreed. More than you know. We've been after the Kozlovs for 3 years. Your son's cooperation will save lives, prevent other families from going through this. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. As they fitted Jake with the wire and briefed him on signals, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us here. A package hidden in a tackle box had unveiled a criminal empire. A father's instinct to protect had led to justice. The silent wolf strategy had worked. Now came the hardest part, letting my son walk into danger to earn his redemption. The warehouse on Brighton Boulevard squatted like a cancer on Denver's industrial landscape. From the FBI surveillance van parked 2 blocks away, I watched monitors showing multiple angles of the building. Jake's wire transmitted clear audio as he sat in his BMW gathering courage for what came next. Remember, Agent Martinez said through Jake's earpiece, we need Kozlov to acknowledge the money laundering operation and make specific threats. Don't push too hard, let him talk. Phoenix 1 is in position, came through the radio, snipers on surrounding rooftops. Phoenix 2 ready? The assault team in a fake delivery truck. Phoenix 3 standing by, undercover agents already inside the warehouse as workers. Morrison sat beside me, her expression tense. Your son's doing a brave thing, Mac. Brave or desperate, I muttered, watching Jake finally exit his car. 2 men met him at the door. Victor and Alexei, both mountains of muscle with prison tattoos creeping above their collars. They patted Jake down, ran a scanner over him. The new technology held. They found nothing. Inside the warehouse looked legitimate. Crates of imported goods, forklifts moving inventory. But in the back office, Dmitry Kozlov waited like a spider in his web. Mid-50s silver hair, expensive suit that couldn't hide the thug underneath. Jake. Kozlov smiled all teeth and no warmth. You've caused problems? The police, Jake started. Yes, the police. Interesting how they knew exactly when and where to look. No. My blood chilled. Kozlov suspected Jake was the leak. I don't know anything about that, Jake said, voice steadier than I expected. Someone must have seen me at Dad's house. Perhaps. Or perhaps someone talks too much. Kozlov gestured to a chair. Sit. We discuss your debt. Jake sat carefully, the button camera giving us a clear view of Kozlov's desk. Papers were spread across it. shipping manifests, financial records, a handgun placed casually within Kozlov's reach. 300,000, Kozlov mused. Plus interest now 350. You've moved 600,000 for us, but operating costs are risk. You understand? That wasn't the deal, Jake protested. You said, deal change. You bring heat, price goes up. Kozlov leaned back. But I'm reasonable, man. You continue working maybe 18 months more, debt is clear. 18 months I can't. The real estate board is auditing. Not my problem. Kozlov's friendly mask slipped. You know what is my problem, Volkov family stealing our territory. Someone feeding them information. You know anything about this? No, nothing. Kozlov studied him, then picked up the gun, examined it casually. You have beautiful children. Emma, she plays violin. Yes, lessons on Tuesday, Thursday at Denver Music Academy. Jake went rigid. Leave my kids out of this? Everything is in this, Jake. Your family, your father, everyone you care about. You work for us now. Not employee. Property. You do what we say when we say. Got it, Martinez whispered. Threats against children, admission of debt structure. We need him to mention the murder conspiracy Jake recorded. Jake, either brave or stupid, pushed forward. What happened to Thompson? He used to handle the northern route. Kozlov's eyes narrowed. Thompson forgot his place. Thought he could negotiate better terms. Now he feeds fish in Chatfield Reservoir. You want to negotiate too? No, Jake said quickly. I just want to know where I stand. You stand where I tell you. Kozlov set down the gun, pulled out a ledger. Next week, bigger package, 100,000. You take to Colorado Springs, meet contact at Garden of Gods. Your father still fishes Saturdays. Yes. Good. We use his truck again. Old man never notices, right? Jake's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He never notices. Perfect. And Jake, your ex-wife's father, the marijuana man. We reconsidered his refusal to help. Maybe you convince him different. He won't. Everyone has price. His grandchildren, perhaps. Accidents happen even in good neighborhoods. That was enough. Martinez spoke urgently. All units prepare to breach. We have conspiracy threats, murder confession. But Kozlov wasn't finished. He stood, walked around the desk, put his hand on Jake's shoulder. You think you're smart, Jake? Think we don't know about your little insurance policy? Jake froze. What? Recording conversations. Very dangerous habit. Kozlov squeezed harder. We found your devices last week. Let you keep recording, see what you do. You building case against us? No, it was just protection, in case you tried to cut me out. Protection. Kozlov laughed harsh and cold. Only protection is loyalty, and you, Jake, smell like rat. He nodded to Victor, who produced a zip tie and moved toward Jake's wrists. Breach! 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 Martinez shouted. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Flashbang grenades detonated, disorienting everyone inside. Doors burst open as tactical teams swarmed in. The workers threw off coveralls, revealing FBI vests. On the monitor, I watched Jake dive sideways as Victor reached for a weapon. Kozlov flipped his desk, grabbed for the gun. Automatic weapons fire erupted, precise bursts from the tactical team. Jake's down, I shouted, seeing him curl behind a filing cabinet. Stay in the van, Morrison ordered, but I was already moving. I'd spent 40 years on construction sites, knew how to navigate dangerous terrain. While Morrison shouted behind me, I ran toward the warehouse, needing to reach my son. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Agents zip-tying suspects, shouts of "clear" echoing through the space. I found Jake in the office, blood on his shirt, but sitting up an agent checking him over. Dad. He looked dazed. What are you doing here? Making sure you're okay. The blood was from a graze where Victor's bullet had clipped his shoulder. You did good, son. Kozlov lay face down, nearby, hands cuffed behind his back, cursing in Ukrainian. He saw me, and his eyes widened. You, the old fisherman. Not so old, I said quietly, and not so stupid either. Understanding dawned on his face. You knew, this whole time. A father protects his children, I said, even from themselves. The next hours blurred together. Jake gave statements at the federal building while doctors cleaned his wound. The recordings from his wire combined with the evidence we'd compiled painted a complete picture of the Kozlov organization. 17 arrests in Denver alone, with more coming as information spread to other cities. But the real reckoning came that evening in a small conference room where Jake and I finally talked without lawyers or agents present. I could have gotten you killed, he said, staring at his bandaged shoulder. When Kozlov pulled that gun, when he realized I was wired. But you didn't run. You stayed, got the evidence. I was terrified. Courage isn't absence of fear, son. It's doing what's right despite the fear. He laughed bitterly. Since when have I done what's right? I'm a gambling addict who stole from clients and endangered my family. You're also a man who faced his mistakes and tried to fix them. That counts for something. Does it? I'm going to lose everything? My license, my business, maybe my kids? Not everything, I corrected. You'll lose what you built on lies. But you're alive, you're free from the Kozlovs, and you have a chance to rebuild properly. In witness protection, a new name, new life away from everyone I love. Freeman had negotiated hard that afternoon. With the level of cooperation Jake provided and ongoing threats from Kozlov, Associates' witness protection was mandatory. But there were options. Freeman says you can refuse protection, take your chances. Prison time probably 5 to 7 years with good behavior. You'd be near the kids, but I'd be dead within a month. Kozlov has people inside. Or you take protection, disappear for a few years until the trials end and the organization is dismantled. Then maybe if it's safe, you can return. Jake looked at me with eyes that had aged decades in days. What would you do? I'd choose life, I said simply. I'd take the hard path that leads to redemption rather than the easy one that leads to a grave. That night, Jake made his choice. Witness protection starting immediately. He'd testify in the trials via video link, help prosecutors understand the full scope of the organization. In return, he'd get a new identity, a modest stipend, and a chance to start over. Linda brought the kids for a supervised goodbye the next morning. Emma and Mason didn't understand why Daddy was going away, why he couldn't tell them where. Jake held them like he'd never let go, whispering promises to write to call when he could, to always love them. Be good for your mom, he told them, and remember, no matter where I am, I'm thinking of you. Linda, to her credit, didn't poison the moment with recriminations. She'd seen the federal indictments, understood Jake had saved other families from the Kozlovs' web. Get help, she told him quietly. Real help. For the gambling, for everything. Maybe someday. She didn't finish, but hope lived in the unfinished sentence. Tom arrived as they left, my younger son finally informed of everything. He hugged Jake fiercely. You stupid idiot. Why didn't you come to me to us? Because you were the good son, Jake said. I couldn't disappoint you too. You're my brother. That matters more than perfect. The U.S. Marshals arrived at noon. 2 serious men in serious suits who would take Jake to his new life. We had minutes for final goodbyes. I'm sorry, Dad, Jake said. For everything. For using you, endangering you, disappointing you. I know you are, and I forgive you, son. But forgiveness isn't a clean slate. You have to earn your way back. How do I do that from witness protection? By staying clean, getting therapy, building an honest life even if it's under another name, by being ready if the chance comes to return. He hugged me, and I felt the little boy who'd helped me build this house, who'd dreamed of building skyscrapers. Those dreams were gone, but new ones could grow in their place. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Jake. Always have, always will. The marshals led him away to a car with tinted windows to a life I couldn't follow. I stood on my porch watching until the car disappeared, then went inside to plan my own next steps. The Kozlov trials would take months, maybe years, but I'd be there for every day I could watching justice unfold. And somewhere living under an assumed name, my son would be rebuilding his life one honest day at a time. The reckoning had come. Now the real work began. 6 months later, I stood in a Denver federal courthouse watching Dmitry Kozlov receive 3 consecutive life sentences. The organization he'd built over 20 years lay in ruins, 47 convictions, hundreds of millions in assets seized, corrupt officials exposed and prosecuted. Jake's testimony delivered via secure video link from wherever the marshals had hidden him had been the cornerstone of every case. But Mr. MacArthur, a young prosecutor approached after the sentencing. The U.S. attorney wanted me to thank you personally. Your son's cooperation saved lives. I nodded, accepting gratitude for something that still felt like failure. Yes, we'd brought down criminals, but at what cost? My son lived under an assumed name. His children grew up without their father, and Sunday dinners had an empty chair that echoed with absence. The months had developed their own rhythm. I met Linda and the kids every Saturday, not for fishing anymore, but for breakfast at Village Inn. Emma had started writing letters to Daddy's Special Mailbox, a U.S. Marshal's office that forwarded approved correspondence. Mason drew pictures of superheroes, always asking when his dad would finish fighting the bad guys. Any word? Linda asked that particular Saturday watching Mason color. He's enrolled in college, I said quietly. Studying addiction counseling. Wants to help others avoid his mistakes. Through Freeman, who maintained limited contact as Jake's attorney, I received occasional updates. Jake worked construction in his new city, I wasn't told where, attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings religiously. He'd sent a photo once through official channels, thinner beard grown out, but eyes clearer than they'd been in years. Tom stepped up as uncle and surrogate father figure, taking Mason to T-ball attending Emma's recitals. He'd be proud, Tom told me after Emma's violin concert. She played perfectly. I'll make sure he knows him, I promised. The real estate clients Jake had stolen from received full restitution from seized Kozlov assets. His broker's license was revoked permanently, but that life was dead anyway. The man Jake was becoming wouldn't want it back. Detective Morrison visited occasionally, updating me on related cases. Your son's recordings exposed corruption in 3 states, she said over coffee one afternoon. Judges, cops, politicians, the cleanup will take years. Worth it. She studied me with those sharp eyes. You tell me, your son's alive. The Kozlovs can't hurt anyone else. Your grandkids have a chance at a normal life. You did what you had to do. But had I late nights, I wondered if I'd handled things differently. Could Jake have stayed? If I'd noticed his gambling earlier, intervened before the debts spiraled. The what-ifs were poison, but I couldn't stop drinking them. Bill Patterson pulled me out of my funk with forced fishing trips. Can't catch anything if you don't put a line in the water, he said, which was both fishing advice and life philosophy. 1 year after Jake entered protection, Freeman called with unexpected news. The last Kozlov lieutenant just pled guilty. With the organization dismantled and ongoing cooperation from other witnesses, the marshals are reviewing Jake's threat level. Meaning in 6 months, maybe a year, he might be eligible for supervised reintegration. Not here in Denver, too dangerous, but somewhere closer, somewhere the kids could visit. Hope that dangerous emotion stirred in my chest. I threw myself into preparation. sold MacArthur Construction's old warehouse, used the proceeds to establish a trust for Emma and Mason's education, started researching addiction counseling programs near Denver, places that might hire someone with Jake's future credentials and past experience. Linda remarried. A good man, an accountant with steady habits, and no interest in gambling. "I want Jake to know I'm not trying to replace him," she said. "When he comes back, if he comes back, we'll figure out co-parenting." "You've been more gracious than he deserved," I told her. "He's the father of my children," she said simply. "That means something." 18 months after the warehouse raid, I received a call from an unknown number. "Dad!" Jake's voice different after so long, but unmistakably his. "Son!" I gripped the phone, heart racing. "How are you?" 642 days clean, he said. "But who's counting?" We talked for an hour, the marshal's allowed monthly call. He spoke about his job, his tiny apartment, the old-timer at GA who'd become his sponsor. "I'm apprenticing with a master carpenter," he said. "Learning finish work. Remember when you tried to teach me, and I said it was too tedious?" "I remember. I was an idiot. There's peace in getting the details right, in building something real." "Yes," I agreed. "There is." Emma got on the line telling her daddy about school friends, her new violin teacher. Mason chattered about dinosaurs and whether Dad could see anywhere he lived. Jake laughed, really laughed, and I heard my son in that sound. 2 years after entering protection, Jake received permission for supervised reintegration. Not to Denver, but to Fort Collins, an hour north. Close enough for regular visits, far enough from old associations. He'd have a marshal checking in restrictions on travel, but he'd be Jake MacArthur again. I drove to Fort Collins the day before his arrival, rented a small house on the east side, filled it with basic furniture, and stocked the kitchen. Nothing fancy, nothing his old self would have accepted. But it was clean honest in a neighborhood of working families building real lives. The marshals brought him at dawn, standard protocol. I waited on the porch of his new home, watching the sun rise over the plains. The car pulled up, 2 agents got out, and then Jake emerged. Prison thin but healthy, cheap clothes but clean, nervous but present. He saw me and stopped, as if afraid I might disappear if he moved too fast. "Hi, Dad." "Welcome home, son." He crossed the yard slowly, looking at the house, the neighborhood, the new life waiting. When he reached me, he held out his hand. A man's greeting acknowledging the distance years had created. I shook it, then pulled him into a hug anyway. "I don't deserve this," he said against my shoulder. "Probably not," I agreed. "But grace isn't about deserving." We went inside toward the small house. He'd start work Monday at a recovery center using his experience to counsel other gambling addicts. Evenings he'd continue his apprenticeship with a local carpenter. Weekend supervised visits with the kids. "It's not much," I said, gesturing at the modest space. "It's everything," he corrected. "It's honest." That weekend I brought Emma and Mason to Fort Collins. The reunion was tearful, joyful, complicated. Jake was daddy, but different. Quieter, more patient, quicker to listen than talk. He showed them his workshop in the garage, taught Emma to sandwood. Smooth helped Mason build a block tower with architectural precision. "Are you staying this time?" Emma asked, as visit time ended. "I'm staying," Jake promised. "Different city, different life, but I'm not going anywhere." Linda came the next week, bringing her husband to establish boundaries and expectations. The conversation was hard, but necessary. Everyone committed to the children's well-being above past hurts. "You've changed," Linda observed after her husband took the kids to the car. "I had to," Jake said simply. "The man you divorced would have destroyed everything he touched. I'm trying to be someone else." "Keep trying," she said not unkindly. "They need their father, but they need him whole." Months passed. Seasons turned. Jake's visits became unsupervised, then overnight. He attended every recital, every game, every school event he was allowed. He built furniture in his garage workshop, solid pieces that would last generations. He sponsored newcomers at GA, sharing his story as a warning and inspiration. One evening, 3 years after that morning I'd caught him in my garage, we sat on his back porch, watching thunderclouds build over the mountains. "I dream about it sometimes," he said quietly. "The warehouse Kozlov, that moment I thought I'd die. But mostly I dream about that morning in your garage, the moment I chose to betray your trust." "We all have moments we'd change if we could. What's yours?" I thought about it. "Not seeing you were struggling sooner, being so proud of your success that I missed your pain." "That wasn't your fault, Dad. I was good at hiding. And I was good at not looking too close. We both made mistakes." He nodded, sipping coffee from a mug Emma had made in art class. "Freeman says the last appeals are done. The Kozlovs are finished. I could probably move back to Denver safely. Will you?" "No. This is home now. The kids are settled with the arrangement. I have work that matters, people who depend on me staying clean. Denver, Jake is dead. Fort Collins. Jake has a chance." That's when I knew he'd truly changed. The old Jake would have rushed back to reclaim his former life. This Jake understood that some bridges once burned light the way forward, instead of the back. 5 years after the warehouse raid, I stood in another audience watching Jake receive a different kind of recognition, his certification as a licensed addiction counselor. Emma and Mason cheered from the front row, now 13 and 11, proud of their father's achievement. "None of this would have happened without Mac MacArthur," Jake said in his speech. "My father saw me at my worst and chose love over abandonment. He played a role, the confused old man, to save me from myself. He taught me that redemption isn't a moment but a daily choice, and that broken things can be rebuilt stronger if you're willing to do the work." Afterward, at a small celebration at Village Inn, our family tradition now included Fort Collins locations, Tom raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To second chances," he said. "To family," Linda added her husband, nodding agreement. "To staying clean," Jake said 6 years into his sobriety. "To redemption," I finished. We drank coffee from thick ceramic mugs, my grandchildren chattering about school, my sons arguing about baseball, Linda and her husband planning summer vacation. An ordinary moment that felt like a miracle. The next morning I woke early from habit. But instead of loading fishing gear, I loaded tools. Jake and I were building a treehouse for Mason grandfather and son working together again. The cuts were precise, the joints tight, each board placed with intention. "Remember when we built the deck?" Jake asked, steadying a beam while I secured it. "You were 10, kept trying to use the nail gun. And you kept saying measure twice, cut once." "Still good advice." We worked in comfortable rhythm 2 generations, sharing skill and silence. The boy who'd hidden packages in my truck had become a man who built safe places for his own children. The father who'd enabled through ignorance had learned when to act and when to wait. As we finished for the day, Mason ran out to inspect our progress. "Grandpa Mac, will it be strong enough?" I looked at the structure. Overbuilt, if anything designed to last decades. Then I looked at Jake, paint in his hair, satisfaction on his face, sobriety coin in his pocket. "Yes," I said, "it's strong enough." That evening, driving back to Denver, I reflected on the journey. From that shocking morning discovery to this day of building together, the path had been painful, nearly fatal, but ultimately redemptive. Jake had asked once if I forgave him. The answer had grown clearer with each passing day. Forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a continuous choice. Every time I drove to Fort Collins, every time I watched him with his children, every time he called from a GA meeting struggling but surviving, I chose forgiveness again. My phone buzzed, a text from Jake. "Thanks for today, Dad. Same time next weekend." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. "Because that's what fathers do. We show up, we build together, we choose love over judgment. Even when our children stumble, even when they fall, we help them find their footing and climb again." The mountains faded in my rearview mirror as I headed home. But I'd be back. My son had taught me that redemption isn't a destination, but a direction. And as long as he kept walking that path, I'd walk it with him. Every Saturday used to be for fishing. Now they were for building. Tree houses, furniture, lives, trust. The catches were different, but no less valuable. And sometimes in the quiet moments between hammer strikes, I'd see glimpses of the man Jake was becoming, and know that every difficult choice had been worth it. The packages hidden in my tackle box had led to destruction and renewal, justice and mercy loss and recovery. They'd tested every bond, revealed every weakness, and ultimately forged something stronger. Not perfect. Perfection was a luxury we'd lost. But real honest and growing steadily toward the light. As I pulled into my driveway, I thought about calling Bill, maybe scheduling a fishing trip. The tackle box held only lures and line, now no hidden secrets or dangerous cargo. Just tools for a simple pleasure shared with a friend who'd stood by me through the storm. But first I had a treehouse to plan. Mason wanted a rope ladder, and Emma suggested a reading nook. Jake worried about safety codes while Tom lobbied for a zip line. Normal family debates about normal family projects. Redemption looked like ordinary life carefully rebuilt and consciously maintained. It looked like my son, sober and present. It looked like grandchildren who knew their father's love. It looked like Sunday dinners with an extra table leaf accommodating growth instead of mourning absence. The porch light was on, welcoming me home. Inside photo albums waited, including new pictures. Jake at graduation family camping trips, Emma's first chair violin performance with her proud father in the audience. Evidence of life continuing healing happening, hope justified. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Addiction was a lifetime battle. The consequences of past choices echoed forward. But tonight, I was simply Mac MacArthur, retired contractor, proud grandfather, and father to two good men who'd each found their way. The tackle box sat in the garage, innocent again. Sometimes I looked at it and remembered, but more often I looked forward, to next weekend's construction project, to Mason's birthday party, to the slow, steady work of rebuilding what had broken. Grace isn't about deserving. It's about showing up with tools and hope, ready to build something better from the ruins. And that's exactly what we'd done, one nail one day, one choice at a time. The house was quiet, settled at peace. I made coffee for the morning, set out my work clothes, and headed to bed. Tomorrow held promise. Ordinary, beautiful promise. And that was miracle enough. But you know what? Looking back on everything that happened, I can't help but wonder, what would you have done if you discovered your child was using you in such a dangerous way? Would you have confronted them immediately? Or would you have played the long game like I did? I'd really love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. These stories of family redemption and second chances need to be shared, because you never know who might need to hear that it's never too late to rebuild. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with family challenges or addiction. Sometimes knowing others have walked this path and survived can make all the difference. Thank you for listening to my family's journey. Remember, the strongest structures aren't the ones that never face storms, but the ones that are rebuilt with wisdom after the tempest passes. May you find the strength to rebuild whatever has been broken in your own life and may grace find you in that process. Until next time, keep building, keep believing, and keep choosing love over judgment.